What up? It's your boy T-Bird with the reaction. Today's Wrestling Wednesday. So definitely this Wrestling Wednesday is dedicated to 30 years of Raw. So in between the videos that I already said, I'm going to do some Raw videos. This is another one I'm going to do right here. Who remembers Raw Underground? Man. One little thing they had going on during the pandemic, I actually was interested and I actually kind of liked it on the cool. Thought it was something they had to put some folks over there that had a hard time getting over. Like Braun Strowman, I thought he was gonna be like the top star. I thought that was gonna be his calling right there. Him and Commander Dean, who he's known as Abba Batunde, wherever the hell his name is. They had a good little few going on, going from the Raw Underground to outside of wrestling. But it also got a lot of folks who made a name themselves, who will make an appearance on there before making something like in other WE or other wrestling company. Like JC Jane was in there before she was known as herself on from Toxic Attraction was on there before she came out, and a couple many others, as well as some folks that think in AEW and Impact Wrestling as well too. But either way, we're gonna check out Raw Underground. What's I by Wrestling's premiere. Well, let's get it.
The Thunderdome era of WWE was flat out odd at times, since everything was in disarray. Allowed them to try out new ideas. Some of these ideas were welcomed, while others, not so much. Oh, yeah. It was August of 2020. The build to SummerSlam was...
what's the guy's name? That damn group. Should it... That was a whole bad direction right there.
Was well underway, and from out of nowhere, they brought out a MMA Fight Club-esque concept, Raw Underground. Raw Underground isn't exactly a foreign concept in wrestling. It reminds me of those fight pit matches and, of course, Brawl for All. Except this was scripted. You weren't seeing shoot fights and JBL getting knocked out. And in some ways,
it was also putting guys from the War Raiders in the map
having
too.
MMA, full-on
Dolph
MMA
Ziggler.
in pro wrestling is just...
Oh, yeah. Dolph Ziggler and... what's the boy name? Madcap Moss was getting hell over in that as well too. They was looking real great in that.
There wasn't really high hopes for this one, but the biggest problem was not the MMA with Raw Underground here. It's a whole different story. For now, let's talk about how Raw Underground came to be. Ever since the turn of the millennium, you had heard of WWE's interest in pursuing MMA. Shane McMahon in particular was very interested in purchasing UFC. This was pre-Dana White, Zuffa, and around the time the WWF was at its absolute peak. That never materialized, and a second attempt by the McMahons came around 2004, but they weren't willing to go all out. Because even if Vince did purchase UFC, it would have been almost impossible to control two huge companies at the same time, and I doubt that UFC would have become as big as it was. Then sometime in the mid-2000s, Shane really wanted to buy Pride. I believe this was around late 2006 when Pride was dying a bit. They had some issues, some financial issues, and they wanted to sell. Shane wanted to take control of the company and have his own thing, but Vince was skeptical, feeling he can't control the outcomes. Because investing in said wrestler means you expect said investment to come good. With a knockout, all that hype would be for nothing. Of course, a couple of months later, in March of 2007, Zuffa purchased Pride for around $65 million and brought the fighters to UFC, basically ending the company. And it was a while before you heard some rumblings of WWE and MMA crossing over. Of course, Brock Lesnar, within the span of 2 months at one point, had a UFC fight against Mark Hunt and faced Randy Orton at SummerSlam. And since WWE around 2019 and 20 was trying a lot of new things, that Dark Raw with the 24/7 championship, cuck storylines, they were bound to do the MMA thing regardless of the pandemic. Because the ratings were falling rapidly. Viewers didn't care, were hopping off, and it didn't help that Monday Night Football was near. Personally, at the time, waiting until 1 or 2 a.m. for Raw and watching disappointment unfold is the worst case scenario. And whenever they did try something, you knew it was because of desperation. As you guys may know, Shane McMahon is a huge fan of MMA. He's friends with Chuck Liddell and has been closely following the sport, so doing Raw Underground was a big thing for him. When asked if he has input on Raw Underground, quite a bit. This goes way back. This isn't an original concept. This is more going back to Roman gladiator times where they used to have short matches. There's been lots of stuff or similar things, I should say, in Japan for quite some time. I've been traveling to Japan since the late 80s when I was a teenager, and I saw some of this, and it's always resonated with me. You mentioned MMA. A lot of my friends do that sport. I also practice multiple forms of it, and I really enjoy it. So if you can blend that with WWE entertainment and what we can have come together, it's a work in progress, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. So as you see here, he's been wanting to do this for a while. They tried to purchase UFC, Pride, but those purchases were unsuccessful, which leads us to Raw Underground. On the August 3rd, 2020 episode of Raw, Underground officially debuted. You had some dancers, which were actual strippers, I should note. The dim lights fitting a grungy location, and Shane McMahon hosted the show. There was a huge emphasis on a man by the name of Dabba-Kato. He immediately destroyed some random, killed another one, all while Shane's talking on the mic. And as you can see here, there was an importance to MMA.
I forgot what his name.
It was a really different vibe, especially when you see how
I forgot what his name was before he became Commander Z. He was Dabba-Kato,
smooth, regular WWE felt. This was just out there and it was gritty. It also helped the wrestlers with a background in mat wrestling and combat sports like Dolph Ziggler because they immediately looked cool out there because of how cold-hearted he was in trying to knock out his opponent. Then you have the newly formed Hurt Business looking like the final bosses of the room. Poor guy over here didn't know what he was getting into. And the dancers kind of felt provocative, as this era of WWE didn't really have that type of stuff. Not this era, it's the current era, but you get what I mean. Even Shelton Benjamin looked like a badass just by stepping in here. They cleared the room of everybody with ease and showed that the Underground was anybody's place. They just have to fight for it. Amongst other stories on the show were Riddick Moss and Arturo Ruas, who were in the competition. They had that dog in them, especially Ruas. Dabba-Kato, though, had the most focus, and I think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why. Bro was so damn big and playing by his own rules. What about the woman?
And not to mention, not to forget that people forget that Almost was the bouncer. That was before he came with AJ Bailey. He was the bouncer.
Shayna Baszler was hungry for competition. Nobody really wanted to fight, but she forced a fight and attracted the rest of the women. It seemed like she was done.
Oh, yeah! Avi Now was in it, too. That was, I guess, Avi Now right there, yeah.
So you know how it ended. They ended up taking away the dancers, which I personally don't get, but whatever. The good part about this whole thing, though, is that guys were doing something, especially if they had the background in sport. Ziggler here was doing very well. Marina Shafir debuted, and even Nia Jax made an appearance to absolutely nothing. She didn't want to wrestle. Fans in general weren't receptive to Underground, and after WWE moved to the Thunderdome, that would become more apparent. Bobby Lashley once again looked like the final boss of the show, destroying random people, and Dolph Ziggler even tried to beat some respect out of Cedric Alexander at one point. Some of the storylines on regular Raw even made their way to Underground. The Hurt Business was dominant, destroying the likes of Ricochet and Apollo Crews. Kevin Owens and Aleister Black took their feud to the mat. There was some stuff going on. But of course, back to Dabba-Kato. He was the big guy over here. He was out here destroying Kevin Owens, Aleister Black. And these were matches. This was during their match. He interfered because he got bumped into. He left his mark and basically showed that he was the future. He was going to debut on the main roster, cause chaos. But we all know how that ended. But in storyline, because word was getting out of this thing, Braun Strowman and the bigger guys were appearing often. He went through Riddick and even dropped Ziggler before having a confrontation with Dabba-Kato. Shane thought, why not next week? Of course, when it happened, the newcomer won, right? Wrong. Strowman dropped him and basically closed down Raw Underground. From there, it disappeared and nobody heard a word about it. Apparently, a COVID outbreak happened around the September 28th episode of Raw, and worried about the virus spreading, WWE put it on hold before outright canceling it. So Raw Underground after 2 months was officially over. Was it missed? Hell no. The thing with the concept is that it wasn't thought out properly. What I mean by that is they got the idea. Probably from Bloodsport, which was popping up a bit at the time, and thought, how do we do a WWE version? And another thing to mention is that it was just there. Of course, there's going to be some wrestlers and storylines with the lust for blood or just competition, but the problem with it is that it had no general stakes to it, no rewards, no incentive. Just Shane McMahon with B-Fab, random stuff happens, and that's it. At the same time, though, the show doesn't overstay its welcome. It just happens like that. You don't have a 30-minute show involving Underground. None of that.
Odyssey Jones was there too. Dang, he's a good amount of people that's an NXT Level Up and that was on this too.
Just a few minutes, and they move on to the next thing. The idea, though, lacked a lot to it, and if well thought out, it would have been better because, personally, I like the concept. You know, I like MMA. I watch MMA. I watch the pay-per-views, this and that. I take an interest in it, and if I were to see WWE wrestlers have their own scripted fights, I'd be interested in it a bit. It's a little niche. Seeing these wrestlers in a different environment is welcome for me. Dolph Ziggler, Chad Gable, hell, what if Brock Lesnar randomly showed up and plowed through the competition?
Crazy.
I think it would have been cool. Wrestlers who grew stressed with following the rules, entering a world where rules cease to exist and have to rely on brutality to survive. That's how I feel it should have been. Plus, they were building up some guys like Riddick Moss and Dabba-Kato, but by the end of it, they all lost to the regular guys. They looked good for a moment, especially Dabba-Kato, but by the end of it, they lost. If it were to continue afterwards, they probably should have built him up a bit more because these guys are Underground originals. But yeah, that's Raw Underground. Weird idea. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of liked it a bit more after making the video. Still not good. It's not good, but in another world, this would have been even better than it was. I think there was
I mean,
a little potential.
Yeah, it's definitely had potential. Like, they could just, if they executed better, they would have put it with better.
There was a little potential for this because it's a niche, you know. Some people are going to be interested in seeing wrestlers, WWE wrestlers, I should note, doing their little MMA thing, even if it's scripted. You know, I was kind of interested in it because we don't usually see Dolph Ziggler, Eric, Ivar, Bobby Lashley. These guys have these fights straight up like this. You know, they usually bounce off the ropes, suplex, whatever. Here they were fighting just to survive and win. Simple as that. And I like that concept, but it should have been well thought out in order for it to have become a success. So yeah. All right, what do you guys think of Raw Underground? Please comment down below. Make sure you hit a punch on the like button and perhaps a slam on the subscribe.
Yeah, this was, like I said, I liked it. It could have been better executed. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But other than that, if you like my reaction, like, share, subscribe my YouTube channel. It's your boy T-Bear signing off. One love.